Good morning, everyone. So today I'm just going to talk about COVID-19 for rheumatology patients and what you can expect. Should you be worried about your immunosuppressant medications? Should you be stopping your medicines? And we've been talking about this throughout the COVID-19, but I actually have a PowerPoint presentation to share with you today. We were on an earlier Microsoft Teams call, but for those who missed it, this is the PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to share my screen now. We're going to show you this. Okay, so COVID-19 and immunosuppressed patients, many patients with rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, psoriatic arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis are on a variety of medications, what we call disease-modifying drugs, where you are on methotrexate, you're on Imuran, Arava, leflunomide, sulfasalazine, biological drugs, which block TNF, anti-TNF drugs. You might know them as Enbrel, Humira, Simponi, Cimzia, Remicade, or you may be blocking interleukin-17, which is Cosentyx, TALS, and there's so many, and Actemra, as well as the newer JAK inhibitors such as Xeljanz, Olumiant, Rinvoq, etc. So I'm going to talk about what is COVID and what you can expect when you're on these medications. COVID-19, we all know, is caused by coronavirus. There are many coronaviruses. The previous coronaviruses, the 6 ones we know, could cause anything from cold, the common cold, to acute respiratory distress syndrome, what we previously knew as SARS. It's now we have a global pandemic, which we've never seen before, most of us in our lifetimes, from March 11th, 2020. Until now, we don't have specific treatments or vaccinations. Where did it come from? Possibly from bats, or from the Wuhan seafood market. The origins are not so important now as we're battling this condition across so many continents. It does spread through droplet infection, through coughing or sneezing. Even people speaking to you can cause the droplets to travel up to 6 feet. And so it enters through your respiratory mucous membrane, through your nose and throat. And it's really important to wear masks, both yourself and the person who may be infected, to wear masks. Now, the problem is there are many people who are asymptomatic, who don't have symptoms and can still spread the virus. The virus is present in their droplets even when they speak. And that's why even if you feel well, wear a mask to protect other people. And even if you feel well, wear a mask to protect yourself from someone who may not have the infection. Now, it does stay on surfaces for a long period of times. People feel safe when they wear gloves. So they wear gloves and then they go around touching everything. But the problem is when you wear gloves and you're not used to wearing gloves, you touch your face or you touch other parts of your body with the gloves or your clothes, and then the virus can be transmitted from your gloves. So if you're wearing gloves, you have to be really careful. So the better option is not to wear gloves and to wash your hands often with soap and water. And also using surface disinfection, you need to use disinfectants which have more than 60% alcohol. Now, the incubation period is anywhere from 2 days to 14 days, but usually it's about a week. It's more severe in elderly people and males, and 80% of patients have mild to moderate disease. Only about 20% need to go and get more severe disease. The clinical symptoms, we're all familiar, we read a lot, fever, cough, shortness of breath, sometimes there's a productive cough with sputum, a lot of muscle pain, severe fatigue, headaches. Loss of smell or taste is a unique and peculiar feature of the COVID-19, diarrhea sometimes, and skin problems. So the lab test, the only reliable test is the nasopharyngeal swab, where the swab is inserted in your nose and throat and is sent for a PCR test, polymerase chain reaction. The antibody test is not reliable and it's only used for people after recovery to test if they're immune to the infection. What about treatment? There's so much information you're all getting through WhatsApp forwards and all sorts of other information on the internet. But basically, the treatment protocols now combine different types of these medications. There are the antiviral medications. There's remdesivir, which is produced by Gilead. And contrary to what people keep saying in the press or in WhatsApp forwards, it's not a cure. It lessens your hospitalization by 5 days. Kaletra is another antiviral. Now, a lot of our rheumatology medications are actually being used for the treatment of COVID. There is, first of all, let's talk about the anti-malarial medication hydroxychloroquine. This was first touted as a cure for COVID. It came from a French study. Then Trump, President of America, started saying that he was using it and that it's a cure. But the studies themselves have not been very encouraging. They're not really showing us that they do much for COVID. In the UAE, it is part of the treatment protocol. You will get these antiviral drugs and hydroxychloroquine if you are having moderate or severe disease and admitted to the hospital. Now, many of our rheumatology drugs block these cytokines. And in the later stages of COVID, there is something called the cytokine storm, where all these inflammatory chemicals in the body get increased and your body attacks itself, much like the autoimmune diseases, which you all suffer from. These chemicals attack the body, and they then cause a lot of reactions in the lung. So we have medications which block these chemicals. This anti-IL-6 or Actemra is a rheumatoid arthritis medicine, which has been used now in the treatment of moderate to severe COVID and having very good results. And even the studies are encouraging. Anti-IL-1 is also a potential treatment, not a lot of studies done on it. A JAK inhibitor called baricitinib or Olumiant is something which has been used also in moderate to severe COVID, and also it is doing extremely well and very good studies, even though small numbers in this particular drug. Colchicine is a medicine which we use for gout. It sort of works through the interleukin-1 pathway, and it might help as well. The studies are very limited for that. Now, also we know that in this autoimmune COVID storm, sometimes there's lots of blood clots happening. People are getting strokes and heart attacks. So anyone who has a blood test, which is high for D-dimer, gets on a blood thinner, and oxygen is very important. You need to give person oxygen. There are some people who have low oxygen saturation, and they don't even have symptoms. But that's why a person who has COVID, if they're staying at home, they need to be monitoring their oxygen saturation through a pulse oximeter. But we need the holy grail. The cure is not there yet. All of these drugs help. The vaccine is still in development, but you can see that the death rate seems to be going down since the time this first started, because maybe we learned to manage this disease better. We have using these drugs earlier, such as Actemra and baricitinib. And so the death rate in Italy was almost 10% at one stage. And now the overall death rate in the world is somewhere between 2.5 to 5%. So the big question is, are patients on disease-modifying drugs such as methotrexate, leflunomide, or biological injections such as Enbrel, Humira, Simponi, Cosentyx, Actemra, Taltz, Cimzia, etc., at higher risk of getting COVID? So from the beginning of this whole pandemic, the rheumatologists around the world collaborated to collect data on any rheumatology patients who happen to get COVID infection. So far, there are about 3,500 patients in this database around the world, but there are many different databases. So I'm going to just share one publication, which was early on at least, which has been reassuring to us. There's a large registry of rheumatoid patients from the global registry. This is the biggest registry and is published in the main rheumatology journal. It can be accessed free if you go and Google it. What kind of patients, rheumatology patients who get COVID, get more severe disease? Who gets hospitalized with COVID? That means the very mild ones, they stay at home, right? But the moderate to severe ones get hospitalized. So the study was meant to address this issue of who is the person who is more at risk. So we all know a person who's over the age of 65 is more at risk. The person who is got comorbid conditions or other diseases is at risk. But we also wanted to particularly look at our drugs. So in this study, it showed surprisingly that these biological drugs, particularly the ones which blocked TNF, anti-TNF, were associated with a decreased risk of hospitalization. That means they decreased the risk of hospitalization with COVID patients who had underlying rheumatology conditions. So in this publication, they had 600 COVID patients who had underlying rheumatology conditions from 40 countries. These patients were on a variety of drugs, from methotrexate, disease-modifying drugs, to different types of biologicals. Half of the patients got hospitalized, 46%. And what was most consistently associated with a high risk of hospitalization was prednisolone dose greater than 10 milligrams per day. So steroids are a problem. So when patients are afraid of the other medications or treatments they get, such as disease-modifying drugs, like methotrexate or their biological drugs, and they stop this because they believe they're immunosuppressed, and then they get a flare-up and use steroids, that's actually worse for them than remaining on the disease modifying drugs and remaining on their biological drugs. Now, if you're using steroids for a short period of time, that may be okay. Anti-inflammatory painkillers was not associated with a high hospitalization status. As I said, the biological drugs may reduce your risk of hospitalization and severe disease, but this was only from this one study, but at least it had a good number of patients, 600. There was no association either for or against hospitalization with anti-malarial drug use. So it seemed to be pretty much stable, and it did not help or make the situation worse. Who's at risk? What I've not included here is age. The main people at risk, even in this database, and even in worldwide data for people who don't have rheumatology conditions and who are not on biological drugs or other disease modifying drugs or immunosuppressants, is age over 65. So age is one big risk factor. Everyone knows this. We're trying to shelter our patients, and patients who are older, trying to tell them to stay at home as much as possible. Obesity, I find young patients who are dying or getting severe disease, obesity is a big problem. So please watch your weight. Diabetes, high blood pressure, maybe. There's a bit of data is a bit out there on that. Chronic renal failure, dialysis, and cancer chemotherapy patients. Unfortunately, men are doing worse than women. High dose of steroids, as I previously mentioned, and chronic lung disease. And the role of smoking is, again, a little bit not so clear. So how do we stay safe? If you are on medication, you obviously want to avoid crowded places. You want to avoid going out too much. You want to use the usual precautions which you've been told about, and use your masks. Masks are so important. You can use any type of mask. A surgical or a cloth mask is more than sufficient, but wear them correctly. Cover the nose and mouth. I have people coming with the mask under their nose or the mask near their chin or on top of the head. And there's really no point using the mask incorrectly. Let it cover your nose and mouth. If it's loose, do something to adjust it, or wear a well-fitted mask. It should not be so loose that it's hanging down and you keep using your hands to pull it up, because then you're contaminating your mask and yourself. An N95 mask is not needed unless you are a healthcare worker. As I said before, gloves are not really required, but you do need to wash your hands with soap and water frequently and use sanitizers. Do you need to sanitize packages, groceries, everything which comes from outside? Really, this is not needed. I previously showed that yes, the virus stays on these packages for a long period of time, but the amount of virus on these packages is so little, it's probably insufficient to give people a COVID-19 infection. So just washing hands after handling them should be more than sufficient. And we don't need to worry about this. And there's no data or studies or any evidence that you can get COVID-19 from handling packages or grocery items. But wash everything, wash your hands. How can I boost my immune system? This is a frequently asked question. Those with autoimmune diseases, we really don't want you to be boosting your immune system, and there is no safe way to do this. But to be healthy or to follow have a healthy immune system, you have to have a healthy diet, and this means really less sugar, less processed foods, less red meat, stop smoking. Eat lots of fresh vegetables, because that helps your gut microbiome or the healthy bacteria in your gut, which helps your immune system. Vitamin D doesn't really come from food. It's mostly from the sunshine. It may be protective. So make sure your vitamin D levels in your blood are good. But if you're not able to do a blood test, take a supplement. And for this period of time, maybe for 2 months, you can either take 5,000 IU daily or 50,000 once a week. Turmeric, ginger, etc. are also useful. They can be used in the diet. There's some little evidence that zinc and vitamin C supplements may be useful, but usually we should be getting adequate quantities from our food. I'm not sure you really need to take all this, but I would encourage people to take vitamin D, because the studies on vitamin D and preventing COVID or having less severe infection are quite strong. Most importantly, be positive. This will end. People keep saying, when is this going to end? It's going to end. And we have a lot to be grateful for. We have a lot to be thankful for. There are people in worse situations than us. As long as we come from a place of gratitude, I think the situation can be better. Secondly, we need to exercise. Yoga is a great exercise to do at home if you can't get to the gym. Meditate. Breathing exercises can help your lungs. But I think most importantly, to get out of yourself or your worry about your job, about your how you pay your bills, are you going to get COVID, about your parents, about your children. Think about how you can help others. Make a phone call to someone who's lonely, who's sad, who may be struggling, an elderly person who's alone, try to think about how you can support someone. And that, I think, is the best way to get over our own personal stress. Now, what I've not covered here is if you are a rheumatology patient and you actually get COVID, you need to stop your rheumatology medication after letting your doctor know. Now, it may be that some of your medicines will be used for your treatment. If you are on Actemra or Olumiant or medicines like that, they may be actually treatment for COVID. So you may have to continue. But check with your doctor. But in the meantime, till you hear back from your doctor, you should stop those medicines. And how soon after recovery can you restart them? You can usually restart your rheumatology medications about 2 weeks after recovery, or if you have 2 negative tests. If you're not able to get the testing, because some countries are not testing people for negativity anymore, if you're not able to get the testing, you can wait for about 2 weeks safely, but your rheumatologist will be able to guide you on this. So thank you for being here with me today. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to say goodbye now.